First off, fresh details have emerged on how efforts by the presidency and the All Progressives Congress APC to forge a political deal with Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, until recently regarded as Kano's beautiful bride and a potential election-shaping force, eventually collapsed. Sources familiar with the talks said engagements between Kwankwaso and President Bola Tinubu stretched across several months, with multiple meetings held, especially in Abuja. However, top sources within the ruling APC told our sister publication last night that negotiations broke down over what they described as excessive and unrealistic demands. According to sources, Kwankwaso sought control of up to 20% of APC's national structure, alongside a vice presidential slot and guarantees extending to the 2031 political cycle. Senior APC figures said the request immediately raised red flags as maneuvering ahead of the 2027 polls gathered pace. Meanwhile, the Dr. Boniface Anebonam-led NNPP has revealed that the decision by Governor Yusuf to leave the party is due to Kwankwaso's domineering attitude and alleged slavish intentions. The NNPP chief stated that Yusuf's move to the APC is not driven by selfish motives, but rather a desire to escape Kwankwaso's suffocating leadership style. The party accused Kwankwaso of attempting to impose his will on others, leaving Yusuf with no choice but to leave. Away from that, the Senate has again delayed passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, opting to set up an ad hoc committee on the recommendations of its electoral committee. This has dashed the hopes of many Nigerians, hoping that the Senate will pass the bill for the amendments to be in place for the 2027 general election. This comes after former Senate leader Ali Ndume says there is growing dissatisfaction in the North with the administration of President Bola Tinubu, warning that if nothing is done about the grumbling, it would have electoral consequences in 2027. Ndume warned that to avoid imminent electoral consequences, urgent steps should be taken to address the prevailing concerns. The Rice correspondent, Omo Bazwai, tells us more.
For the second time in 1 week, the Nigerian Senate failed to pass the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. After every other matter on the other paper was stepped down to allow lawmakers deliberate on the report of his Electoral Committee, Senate on Thursday went into a closed-door session for more than 2 hours. When the doors reopened, President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, announced the decision to set up an ad hoc committee to make greater input and properly compile the opinion of lawmakers regarding the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
A closed session on the ongoing amendment to the Electoral Act 2022. The Senate has set up a small committee to further make contributions, galvanize, distill all the opinions of the civil senators and present them to us for final deliberation on Tuesday.
The high-powered committee, which is chaired by Senator Adeni Adigbomire, who currently serves as Chairman Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, is given the next 2 days to complete the assignment and revert to the Senate for further deliberation next Tuesday.
And has also included very ranking senators as members. The Distinguished Senator Adamo Alero, the Distinguished Senator Waziri Tamboa, the Distinguished Senator Adams Oshimole, the Distinguished Senator Mohamed Goje, the Distinguished Senator Tony Woye, the Distinguished Senator Taito Zam as members. The committee has 48 hours, or at most 3 days, in which to conclude its assignments and refer to the Senate before our next plenary.
Some of the amendments being proposed include a new subsection 3 on page 45 of the bill that seeks to check manipulation of results and ballot box snatching through electronic transmission of results from each polling unit to RF Portal in real time. Such electronic transmission shall be done simultaneously with the physical collation results. Section 22 of the proposed Electoral Act Amendment Bill seeks to increase the fine for offences of vote buying and selling from 500,000 naira to 5 million naira and a 10-year ban on perpetrators from eligibility to contest elections in Nigeria. Others include voting rights for inmates and a term of 2 years imprisonment for a person that financially and materially induces delegates for the purpose of influencing the outcome of conventions. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, says the ban on the packaging and sale of alcohol in sachet and small bottles in the country is still in force. A statement signed by the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, pointed out that the agency has resumed its enforcement to ban the production and sale of alcoholic beverages in sachets and small volume PET glass bottles below 200 milliliters. Adeyeye said the measure is in line with the recent directive of the Senate. However, the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, described NAFDAC's renewed enforcement of the ban on the production and sale of alcoholic beverages in sachets and small PET as a serious regulatory misstep with far-reaching economic and governance implications. Also, the Food, Beverages and Tobacco Senior Staff Association says NAFDAC's blanket ban on sachet alcohol will hurt the economy. The group is calling for a fresh dialogue comprising stakeholders in the industry, the National Assembly, the Federal Ministry of Health, NAFDAC, and civil society organizations to engage in open, transparent, and evidence-based dialogue aimed at crafting policies that protect public health without destroying livelihoods or creating regulatory contradictions. Reacting to a press release by the NAFDAC DG, FOBTOP President Jimoh Oyibo disclosed that the association acknowledges and fully supports the shared objective of protecting children, adolescents, and vulnerable populations from the harmful use of alcohol. Moving on, Africa Finance Corporation, AFC, has secured long and short-term ISUA credit ratings of A1 with a positive outlook from S&P Global Ratings, underscoring investor confidence in its balance sheet strength, liquidity position, and expanding role in financing Africa's infrastructure needs. The agency cited expectations of improved capitalization and a more diversified shareholder base as key drivers of the outlook. In contrast, Fitch Ratings has downgraded the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, pointing to rising asset quality risks and pressure from operating environments across member countries. The mixed rating reactions highlight diverging credit trajectories among Africa's major multilateral lenders as tighter global financial conditions test capital buffers, risk management, and funding resilience across the continent. All right, these are the stories before us this morning, Rufai, from politics to the ratings, recent ratings, and then, of course, I'm going on to NAFDAC's position despite the calls by FOBTOP to put this on hold based on economic reasons.
So a couple of things. At first, I want to start with a disclaimer. Please, I'm saying this morning, I've got nothing to do with an investment scheme by any certain Chomade buyer online that says I'm telling you to bring money for some investment. And I do not sell any prostate drug online, please. Somebody just called me that they had lost 400,000 naira this morning to that investment scheme. I've got nothing to do with it. And please, I'm giving this disclaimer here. And please, police authorities, go after the scammers and get people's money back. As regards the Senate, these are my fears. My fears are that with postponing this process for another couple of days, I think we're going to lose it. We're going to lose the chance to be able to right all the wrongs we saw in the last election. And it would be a miracle if they finally assent to it. Because you need a 1-year mark prior to implementation. And if they are going this way, it's very sad. And these things are not things that you need to review over and over again. These are all of the things that Nigerians complained about in the last elections, that marred the last election. The fact that we couldn't get BVAS in real time, IREV in real time, and some other challenges. Please, the Senate, save this country. Because if nothing is done, it will be on record that the Senate lost their chance to be part of the success of this country. But I'm not surprised. Was this not the same Senate that even before we talked about passing BVAS and using BVAS prior to the 2023 election, most of them lied that they had no internet in their villages when the debate was on? So they are always concerned about this. And that's why I keep saying this Senate does not really represent the hopes and aspirations of the people. Look at what Aliu Dume said yesterday about the tax laws. The same president said something. Aliu Dume said no, that they have seen multiple discrepancies. In fact, there's a story on the front page of Daily Trust today that is saying that there's been breach in the tax laws. Go and read Daily Trust today to see that story. As regards even the Establishment Act and people they put on different boards. So we just want Nigeria to be clean and clear. But it's so difficult for some people. You know why? Because they have interests. And the interest about them. And you see, for all the resource you get from your interest, you won't take it to heaven. We keep saying that. You will die and go. And people that even know how you amass the resource will be the ones that use it after you. So do what you can for humanity. As regards Kanu, it's beginning to get obvious that Kwankwaso did overshoot the wrong way. Based on the reportage we got from this day, saying that he wanted 20% of the structure of the APC, is he God? I thought Kwankwaso would have worked at even consolidating and having a couple of states. Because you see, this beautiful bride mentality is always hard. You cannot compare yourself to Bola Tinubu. Bola Tinubu then, before he became President Tinubu, had about 5 to 6 states in the Southwest. He consolidated. So anytime he wanted to bargain politically with President Bola Tinubu now, he had many things on the table working for him. And that's why when President Buhari was able to do the deal across the Niger, across the Benue, like Anatu, my sister, was saying, there was something President Tinubu could bring on the table. But you've just been only one state. And now you're bargaining with people and saying you want to get 20% of the structure and all of that, and you're talking about vice presidential ticket. How about when the man has a running mate? And the running mates, Vice President Kashim Shettima is not a pushover. What you have, he also has. He's former governor like you. So, if based on the reportage, and I'm saying if based on that because it's one side we hear, if based on that reportage, and it's anything to go by, then I think he's overshot himself. But he can also try to redeem himself, and the next elections will matter. Will he be able to float on other candidates that will be able to go against APC in the state and beat his own political godson? That would be the battle royale of the century, because he needs consolidation. But now, like the reportage is saying this day, he has a weak bargaining power as regards anything he wants to do now. So it's even going to be way more difficult for him, to be able to make an inroad as regards anything he's going to do at this point in time. I'll yield the floor because of time.
All right, Dr. Bata.
Very quickly. Let me start with, Dr. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, whose story is in the news. One, in politics, there's something called ostracing. Whether it's in Nigeria or the United States, politicians always want something that will be to their own advantage. What has happened in Dr. Kwankwaso's rumored, publicized, reported attempt to join the APC is that the horse trading failed. And what we have been told is that he was making excessive demands. One, he wanted 20% of APC structures across the country. Even President Bola Ahmed Tinubu cannot boast that he has 20% of APC structures across all the states and the Federal Capital Territory. And two, he also wanted to be made made the vice president. So almost dictating to the ruling political party that if I join you, then you will have to change your vice president as the minimum demand. And that he also went further and said in 2031, he should be put there as the presidential candidate. All of these demands, the APC reportedly said, well, we don't agree. we can't even discuss 2031. We're talking about 2027. And that already we have a structure in place. You cannot come as an outsider and then come and take like almost half of the party. So the other basic thing beyond horse trading in politics is strategy. It is the person that with the best, smartest strategy that wins. Now, it seems to me that in this particular case, the APC and President Tinubu will seem to have outsmarted Dr. Kwankwaso, who obviously must have believed that, yes, given the strategic importance of Kano State, which is 44 local governments, and also the voting block of almost close to 20 million, because you have to win Kano, as I've said before, win, Lagos, win Rivers, and have 2/3 of the total votes, count according to the Constitution. But what Dr. Kwankwaso has been shown is that it's not as important as he thinks he is. So they've now gone to pick the governor, Governor Abba Yusuf, who is the sitting governor. He has the leverage, there's factor of incumbency, and the federal will face him. So this is about horse trading and also about strategy. How that plays out in the long run remains to be seen. Don't forget that Ganduje is also a factor in Kano State, and Ganduje is on the is on the side of the federal government. So it's a battle royale that we are likely to see in Kano. And Dr. Kwankwaso, by insisting on his own choices, has put his relevance in Kano politics to test, to perhaps what you may call the ultimate test. And then, of course, on the sidelines, Dr. Boniface Aniebonam is accusing, Kwankwaso of being overbearing, and that is because he's making excessive demands. Also, at the local level, that the governor, Abba Yusuf, has now decided to go and join the APC, where perhaps he has been promised, it's not just his second time, but the freedom to run the state without an overbearing godfather. The final point is about the influence of godfathers, a subject that we will always continue to review in this country. Now, as for the ad hoc committee set up by the Senate of the Federal Republic, first, there was a report to plenary from the Senate Committee on Electoral Matters. Now, they couldn't take the matter because Senator Lalong, chairman of the committee, was absent. This is a kind of indolence that we talk about, except they give us the reason why the chairman of the committee was absent on the day that his own committee was going to report. We will be suspicious that this is clearly a case of abdication of responsibility. Was he in the hospital? Did he have some other compelling reasons why he did not show up? So Senator Simon Lalong has to speak up why he obstructed the work of the Senate of the Federal Republic. Because it was because of his absenteeism, which should be something we should begin to punish. These people are not sent to the National Assembly to go and sleep, to be absent, to give excuses when important matters are to be discussed. But because Senator Simon Lalong was purportedly negligent, the Senate now had to set up an executive committee. Now, that executive committee came back yesterday and presented a report that they can present. And now, on the basis of whatever they reported, the Senate president has now set up an ad hoc committee. Look, if you don't want a problem to be addressed in Nigeria, you keep setting up committees. Yes. I hope that after this ad hoc committee, they will not set up another committee to review the submissions of the ad hoc committee, 7-man committee led by Senator Adegbamire with other persons. They have been asked to submit their report on Tuesday. I hope that on Tuesday also Senator Lalong will show up. However, the issues are very important to be treated, too important to be treated with levity. We're talking about the integrity of the electoral process, amendment of the Electoral Act 2022, which people have pointed out, issues about electronic identification of voters, issues about, the rights of voters to have a free and fair election. I said yesterday, I repeat it, that we do not want to have the kind of situation we had in 2018 when, there was a postponement of, the Electoral Act amendment process just because the Buhari government was complaining about language and complaining about procedure. The urgency of now is what attaches itself to this process that we are working on now. As for Afrexim Bank is saying one thing, Finance Corporation is saying another thing. Fitch says, Afrexim Bank is now in a junk territory, because of certain omissions with Ghana debt. AFC is saying something else. AFC is not a rating agency. So I'll dismiss that as just propaganda from two sides of the mouth. Whatever the truth is will come out later. But all these ratings and all of that, it depends on who is looking at the story. Well, there's no other topic. If there is any other
Just
one.
the NAFDAC one, but we have Professor...
Oh, NAFDAC. Professor Adeyeye is going to be here. So I don't want to prejudge what she will say.
And I think it's important for her to actually lead this conversation because it's become very contentious. We've had in the past few days representatives of the Food and Beverages Association of Nigeria, and then we've also had from other interest group. MAN was here yesterday, and it'll be important for NAFDAC to present their case. There are very strong arguments from both sides of the divide. One for economic reasons, the other for public health reason, and perhaps today should lay to rest some of the concerns made by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and push or make a very solid argument in the interest of public health. So stay tuned for that one very shortly. But let me talk about some politics this morning and looking at the revelations that have come out from a credible source based on our sister publication this day, giving us an insight into some of the terms asked for by Dr. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso. As has already been established, I'm expecting a rejoinder or maybe a defense from his camp to break it down, whether to agree or not on this particular report. But based on this particular source, I believe that Dr. Kwankwaso shot himself in the foot. Because now that the APC has done a master stroke and sidestepped him and gotten to his governor, who is a key, factor in this agreement, he does not have many options before him. I say that because the stronghold of the Kwankwaso movement, and we said this during the lead up to the last election, was mainly in Kano State. It would be a stretch to even say across the northwest or northern part of Nigeria, because even the results of the election reflected it as so. In the 2023 elections, NNPP, with Dr. Kwankwaso as presidential flag bearer, was only able to poll 1.496 million votes, making him fourth in that race. Beyond that, the only state that NNPP won in that election was Kano State. And so if the APC did not agree to these very tall demands that he made in order to have a coalition, which other party would be willing to make a coalition based on the almost unrealistic demands? That's why I find it very difficult to imagine that he asked for 20% of the APC structure in Nigeria. Very difficult. I can understand the part around the vice president, because he himself has come out to say that any party is going to join or have an agreement with must be willing to give him either the presidential or vice presidential ticket. So that's understandable. He himself has come out to say that. But asking for 20% of the APC structure, to what extent and to what is he bringing to the bargaining table is not commensurate to what his ask is. And so what would be his other, considerations? Number one is that 2023 elections demonstrated that the NNPP is not strong enough to win an election on its own or by itself. It was only able to win in Kano State. The second of it is that there are internal wranglings in the NNPP itself. And so the ability to win an election in 2027 is very slim. And besides, the fact that this has affected the party even further from 2023 means that they might not even be able to get up to the number of votes in a 2027 election if they ran on their own, especially as Kano State, where they won alone, the governor has now defected to the APC. If he wants, he cannot, maybe a coalition with the Labour Party, but the Labour Party itself is belabored with a lot of internal wranglings. And this is why, or one of the reasons, Mr. Peter will be moved from the Labour Party to the ADC. And so if they wanted to form a coalition with the Labour Party, that is not strong enough to stand in the 2027 elections. If he decides to go with the ADC is already saturated with heavyweights ahead of the 2027 elections. So this is why I put it that he shot himself in the foot, and I don't see how, very reasonably and based on the facts on ground, he'll be able to bounce back or have any shot now at either presidency or vice presidency in 2027. But of course, this is politics, anything can happen. 2023, there were a lot of upsets in the 2023 election. Dr. Abati talked about traditionally, you must win Kano, Rivers, Lagos State. But in the last presidential election, President Tinubu was only able to win in Rivers State. He didn't win in Lagos State. He didn't win in Kano State. And so a few things can change when it comes to politics. Almost like football, anything can happen. Let's see what will happen ahead of 2027. Now, talking about 2027, what ought to have been a game changer, or what ought to be a game changer, is the amendment of the Electoral Act of 2022. And this is in the efforts to correct some of the challenges or wrongs areas that happened in the 2023 elections to give Nigerians a credible, free and fair election. And what it looks like, based on these postponements, on reasons that, to be quite frank, for such an important piece of legislature doesn't hold water, is the fact that Nigerians are now beginning to disbelieve the political will of the Senate to actually pass this bill. Because, number one, time is going. We have about 13 to 14 months before the elections themselves are meant to hold in 2027. And then we have civil society organizations protesting the fact that the politicians must remember that they're not there to make laws for themselves or their political party. They are there on the mandate of the people to represent the interests of Nigerians first, before political interests. But of course, I know that's just what it is on paper. But very importantly, finally, our end on this point is that we must also remember, in terms of active citizenship, that the senators are there on the mandate of the people. Therefore, it is high time that Nigerians took on the responsibility of actively engaging their representatives and ensuring that when they go to the Red Chamber, they actually represent their interests and their views. And so maybe it's high time for people, constituents, to call on their representatives and make demands based on their, the mandate that they've given to them. If we don't, if Nigerians don't all get involved in the political process, we will continue to see politicians go into places of representation and serve their own interests rather than the interests of the good of the Nigerian people as a whole. With NAFDAC, we already mentioned, looking forward to that interview with Professor Adeyeye, and of course other interviews to come this morning on The Morning Show.